Okay. The next installment, we're going to go through and take a look at Jarvis and its interaction between random reply, which is a script I wrote that uses a SQLite database. We'll take a quick look at that. So everything is within the Jarvis directory under scripts. Few scripts you'll see. I like to take backups, so I can go back to work. And here are scripts. JV represents Jarvis, that it's a script that Jarvis will call. I didn't do that with random reply. It was one of my first ones, so I just kept it. And building the database, this one will go through and actually take a copy of the database and build the Jarvis files from it. DB commands, forgot what that one. IP will tell what the IP address is. Time will give you the current time. The pi's IP, another experiment, and random reply. So random reply, basically a TCL script, relies on tclite or sqlite3. Has a path to its database. I'm not going to go through in too much detail here typically, and if I've done my part right, you wouldn't have to do too much with this, but it will go and interact with the database, grab lists of replies, pull the string out, and feed it back to the standard out, so you get a random reply to a request. That was the basic premise of what I was going for. So from learning with Jarvis, I found that it uses under the Jarvis directory Jarvis -commands. And here you can do a lot. This is where the meat of Jarvis comes from. And I use Snowboy, so I'm assuming it's much the same, but with others, but I will find out someday. A lot of plugins that you can add into. WW Forecast is a plugin that I got from the Jarvis UI and just downloaded, installed, worked great. I went and looked at the files and played around with them and saw they worked and incorporated it. So the hello that we saw earlier, this is how the command itself is dumped from the database. You don't see the different replies itself. What it works off is ID. So when you go and add a new reply, you give it a new ID, and each reply to that command, it could just be a single time and it tells you the time, or it could be more interaction. So I issue a command, it gives a response, I voice an option, it gives a reply, my last option is the third one. It'll only go 3 deep that I've seen, and each one of those you can add different responses to. So that was the goal behind it. I first started out by editing and not using SQLite, which is a serverless database. It runs, SQLite is simply just a file on your file system that whenever something needs to use it, you call the SQLite software, and then you can interact with that file as if it was a database. Very lightweight, very flexible, excellent for this type of application. It also fun to play with, and for this project, hopefully folks get a chance to play and learn, because database and system architecture stuff is always fun. So the SQLite database itself is what the random reply. So whenever a command is triggered, it's going to say or run the text to voice or text to speech software with whatever comes back from this script. There's a bunch of different other things you can do that don't say something with the semicolon being a delimiter, and the script accounts for that in the database. I'll show you later. So you can run a sequence of commands that you want to do. Very flexible. So let's say you wanted to do something like flash lights. What you could do is very simply, and we won't go into this now, but a basic setup is you would copy one of these commands, or in this case add it to your database on what command you want to actually run, and it will execute that script whenever that word is spoken. So if you wanted to power off or call and open up Bluetooth or turn on and off lights, and or whatever you want to do, turn on a servo, whatever you want to do, you can interface very easily with. So we'll be playing more with that later. So there's a basic interface with the database. Let's show you real quick what the database itself. So here you'll see I'm opening up a console window. Have one that's sqlitebrowser. It comes easily to install through apt-get for your Raspberry Pi. There are a lot of other SQLite administrative tools. SQL, one that I use is that has a lot more options to it, is SQLite Studio, a SourceForge package. Very nice, a lot of options, and for what it is, just perfect. I know that a lot of people that will play with this won't necessarily be into Unix and want to edit files all the time. You can go and run a sqlite3 against the file and just use command line to the database for your scripting. I use TCL, and there's a really nice option built in with the latest that natively will interact with the SQLite. So I just went with that and moved on. sqlitebrowser, you run it. If you don't have it there, you type it out. Some real basics. You can open the database. In this case, starts at your home directory. The account is Pi. I just kept it vanilla. Jarvis. I created a database file, and I have a random reply database with a random reply SQLite database. Here you have two tables and the tables fields. Dialog, which is the random replies, how you configure the random reply and what will be said in the reply and how a trigger word will be managed. The second is the Jarvis variables. So it's a variable value and text information, notes information for yourself on your Jarvis dash, I believe it's functions file that lets you set variables. So what this will do is it will let you set variables that can be shared not only in the database so that your scripts know what they are, but you can also pass variables from your application or from Jarvis to your script. So instead of having to pass all the information, like my commander's name is this and they might use this word, all the possibilities, you can put these in variables and pass them behind the scenes, so if they're needed, they're there. But all of that ends up getting managed through the SQLite browser. So we're going to stop there, and we'll get into some more of how the two interface next time.